Whenever I hear Josef Fares introduce one of his games, I'm reminded of a wacky substitute teacher. The kind who throws out the textbooks, replaces them with bongos, and 5 minutes later the classroom looks like a scene from King Kong. In interviews, he is always banging his drum about passion. He's passionate about what he does, and he hopes that players will feel that same passion in his games. Passion is one of those words that children love to use and teachers hate to see used. But Fares doesn't care about the rules, and he's not afraid of using the well-worn cliché. Like its director, Split Fiction is wild and energetic, fond of using familiar phrases as much as it is of shaking things up. At its heart is a simple childlike desire to excite, delight, and surprise.
Now that's an impressive sight!
The setup is straightforward, or at least fairly so. Mio and Zoe are two 20-something writers hoping to get their stories published by a company called Raider Publishing. Raider is less like Penguin and more like Abstergo. The CEO tells the hopeful young writers that they will undergo a unique simulation of their stories in his cutting-edge device. Their experiences will be recorded and then packaged and published. The writers are not told the exact terms of the contract. Raider does not want to bore us with details.
Why read or watch a story when you can live it, touch it, feel it?
Mio is the only one who questions the process. This is not what they signed up for. But before long, their suits light up, half of them in green and half in purple, and the participants are placed in suspended animation. Mio is the only one who escapes her techno bubble. Her protests lead to a tussle with Raider. After wresting herself from his grasp, she stumbles back into the same bubble as Zoe, and the pair floating around like twin babies in the womb. But they are not exactly two peas in a pod. We learn that Zoe writes fantasy and Mio science fiction. One is an introvert, the other an extrovert. One is optimistic, the other realistic. Their stories reflect their personalities. Zoe's fantasies brim with warmth and colour. Mio's sci-fi is cold by contrast. Touching the glitch, a sort of crack in the virtual space-time continuum, teleports the pair to either a fantasy world or a sci-fi world. I suspect most players will gravitate towards the fantasy levels. Not only are they more cheerful than the sci-fi ones, but they are stuffed full of eye candy. Flowers and pennants, turrets and cottages, trolls and villagers all battle for screen space during the first of many chase scenes. What makes such bustling scenes all the more impressive is that they are often rendered twice using a split screen. The two screens become one during special moments. These could be big moments like when one character controls a giant insect while the other defends its back. Or they could be small moments like sharing the bench with your partner. Hazelight is fully invested in a human co-op experience. There's no option to play with an AI companion. You can play with a stranger from the internet, but good communication is key to solving puzzles. Otherwise your eyes will be ping-ponging between the two screens. Matters are made more complex by the ever-changing gameplay. New mechanics are introduced with every new chapter, and, more often than not, with every few checkpoints. Hazelight has the doubly tough task of easing two players into a new set of mechanics in a short space of time. On top of this, the levels constantly shift perspective, from third person to top down to isometric to side scrolling to behind the character, or to one character top down and the other side on. Hazelight has the player spoiled for choice. The novelty value means that a second playthrough is unlikely to match the giddy highs of the first. However, playing as the other character offers different abilities and traversal routes, making this a fun game to revisit once the dust has settled. Split Fiction has its fair share of leisurely activities, and they will be greatly appreciated. Much of the gameplay requires a laser-like focus and well-honed reflexes. This is a more intense, skill-based affair than It Takes Two. Personally, I found it too intense. Some boss fights feel like a marathon test of endurance. They are almost comically drawn out. Even while my eyes were awed by the wild artistry on display, my brain couldn't wait to go back to skipping stones or the like. For those who hate hammering the prompt button or wiggling the joystick, there are at least accessibility options that will help smoothen out the experience. Another thing I appreciated was the sleek and streamlined level design. There were no flashy gewgaws to collect. Split Fiction is purist in its approach to gameplay, reflecting the views of Hazelight, which stands firmly against the use of loot boxes and microtransactions. The only side content are the side stories, 12 short and self-contained levels that take place in the alternative world. On the sci-fi side, there's SSX-style hoverboarding among heat ray explosions. On the fantasy side, there's a brief trip to a Hogwarts-like village to find a trio of magical stray cats. There you also have the chance to muck about with shape-shifting potions. These diversionary activities serve a similar role to the minigames in It Takes Two, but they are not so demanding of your attention. They are there to be enjoyed, but they can just as easily be skipped. The story strays into more serious-minded territory in the later levels, exploring the inner demons of its two lead characters. But the psychoanalytic commentary is short of subtlety. The game naturally invites comparisons to Psychonauts 2. Both games deal with negative emotions and repressed traumas through a literal descent into the minds of its characters. But the tragic backstories in Split Fiction feel patently manufactured. The dialogue is much too on the nose, and the melodrama is at times painfully cliched.
I feel trapped. It's like I'm lost in the dark. I don't know what to do.
Having said that, the writing is not all bad and some emotional moments work better than others. When the pair encounter a huge octopoid creature kept captive in an industrial facility, Mio explains the significance to Zoe in perhaps a few too many words. But then there comes an escape sequence on jet skis in which the facility crumbles all around them, and Mio's anger explodes to the surface, and the action is so tightly laced with the drama that it's difficult not to share in her excitement. Now return to the opening cutscene and Mio's distrust of the machine gains a new edge. You realize that her deep-rooted fears are the true catalyst for the plot.
Screw this. I won't do it. I won't do it. Please return to your platform, ma'am. I can't do this.
And yet these moments are easy to write off when the dialogue is so incredibly cheesy. The bosses are always spouting terrible puns and over-the-top lines. Vader is essentially the big bad wolf in the form of a tech giant. He lures young innocents into his machine so that he can devour their ideas. He spends most of his time huffing and puffing, and in the third act he threatens to blow down the hero's house. This is all well and good, but he trots out many a trite line, and his aggressive yelling quickly grows tiresome. The heroes outshine Vader in the creativity department, but not as much as one might hope for. Their comments on the transformative power of fiction are far from profound. The banter is at best playfully observant,
Going up. Sideways. Or upside down. Up.
and at worst glaringly unnatural.
Huh. Imagine how much you needed to eat every day.
There are some very nice facial animations and the performances are fine. It's just that the word cheesy keeps coming to mind.
Always remember that in complete darkness,
A single spark shines like the sun.
And I never really believed that these two were writers. Each one is weirdly competitive about their preferred genre being better than the others. Also, their worlds take most of their inspiration from popular films and games rather than books. Suffice to say, there is material here that I have trouble imagining in a carefully crafted work of fiction.
Wabba-da-boo-boo! Witness the eighth wonder of the world!
Perhaps the truth of the matter is that most players won't really care. It's the gameplay that's the star of the show, with the story playing second fiddle to the action. There are many moments in this game that will have you tickled. There are many levels and even sections of levels that are packed with more ideas than you might find in a game twice as long. Hazelight offers a cornucopia of pleasures, of pop cultural images, gameplay styles, playful diversions. So maybe they are guilty of the same sin as Radar, of plundering material from other creators and then repackaging them as their own. Then again, they also created a boss battle that revolves around industrial-sized pinball and platforming puzzles that have you clearing obstacles as one half of a two-headed centipede thing. Looking back, there are times when this game is really quite weird.
What? But I can't dance! Your monkey can! dark. Let's reveal it then.
I think my subconscious twisted my pinball memory into a lock.
Well, that makes about as much sense as everything else.